Hello, it's Sonia here with the Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Wednesday, and that means it's the stitch of the week. So today's stitch, I thought I would feature another Tunisian stitch. And I actually do have a project that uses this stitch, and I realized I never used it as a stitch of the week. So for today's stitch, I'm going to be using my K hook or 6.5mm hook, and I just have some basic worsted weight yarn, and you can use a variety of yarns and hook sizes for this. Now of course I'm using a regular straight crochet hook to make this swatch, but if you were making a larger project, then of course you'd want to use a Tunisian hook. But if you've never done Tunisian before, or just kind of did a little bit in Tunisian, you know, you can just use a regular straight crochet hook to get started and just see how you like it. Alright, so for today's stitch, we are going to be chaining 10. Okay, so I have my 10 chains here. And so we are going to be working in the back bump of the chain for our first row. And I usually like to do Tunisian that way. So I'm just going to turn my chain on the other side and you can see that back bump. So I'm going to pull up loops and not work them off. So if you've never done Tunisian before, I have a playlist of Tunisian, like beginner and basic Tunisian stitches to get you started. So with this first row of Tunisian, and Tunisian's always worked in two parts. You have a forward pass and a return pass, and sometimes when you work with a larger hook your chains get a little funky. So let me work through this here. I think we fixed it. It's not always perfect. The crochet struggles. Oops. And this yarn I'm using too, I took apart a project, so it's a little bit like kinked up and ruffly, so it doesn't create a nice smooth chain. But I think we got through it fixing that. So I should have 10 loops on my hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So whatever amount you chained is however many loops you should have on your hook. So now we are going to work these off in basic Tunisian return pass. So I'm going to yarn over, pull through 1 loop, and yarn over, pull through 2 for the remainder of this row. And then after I'm finished, then my row 1 will be complete. So row 1 is my setup row, my foundation. And then we are going to get into the Tunisian, it's a reverse Tunisian stitch. So to begin our second row, we are doing the reverse Tunisian stitch. And normally when you're working in Tunisian, you're working in these bars. So let me get a smaller hook here so you can see a little bit better. So this is a bar. Usually you work in here. And then here would be the next one. But if you look closer at this, and let me see if I can spread it apart, if you kind of manipulate the stitches, it almost looks like a chain if you kind of stretch it apart. So here would be the front of the bar, and we're doing reverse Tunisian crochet stitch, so we're going to be actually working in the back of the bar, which is actually back here. That's why I used a larger hook so you can see a little bit better. So we're actually working in this stitch back here. Let me go back to the first stitch that we'll be working with. So here was our first stitch, and this is the front part of the bar, is what you normally work in. But we're going to be working in the back. Right there. So let me get my actual working hook here. So it can be a little fussy, like trying to finagle it at first, you know, little hook gymnastics, but once you get going, it's not so bad. So I'm going to be working in this bar here. So I want to push this yarn away. It's almost like you're doing a yarn over, but not quite. And you're going to be inserting your hook like this to get to that back bar, which again, it seems kind of, we're not used to doing that with crocheting, and it might feel awkward, but it's actually not too bad once you get going. So this yarn is going to be behind the hook. I'm going to bring my hook down, and I'm going to wrap my hook around to get to that bar, and just, so now I'm working in the back and put my hook in that bar, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull up my loop. So I have 2 loops. So if you've done Tunisian knit stitch, so I can I'm trying to explain this better, and I'm probably completely botching it here. So when you're doing a Tunisian knit stitch, if you're familiar, you go right through that center. So you are actually going in between both of the bars, the front bar and the back bar. But we're actually going to be pulling up the loop. We're just working in this back bar, back there. Oops, I got some extra yarn there, back there, to create the stitch. So let me try to show you again. And that's why I'm using this larger hook, so hopefully you can see a little bit better. So if you're looking at, here's the front bar, there's the back bar. So I'm just going to, I just put my hook through that space, and then I kind of insert it to pull up that back bar there. And I'm going to do that all the way across here until I have my 10 loops on my hook. And then my very last stitch, I will be working a Tunisian knit stitch. I just prefer to do that in almost any Tunisian project, and the reason why is it just gives a cleaner edge with any Tunisian crochet project. Okay, so I'm just going to work a Tunisian knit stitch, and again I will have a link, a playlist of all these stitches. So there's my first row there. I should have 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. And then your return pass, you just work this off like normal. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of your row. And then there is my second row, and an easy way to count your rows. If you look on the side, and I had my loop on my hook too loose, that's why that looks so large, but it looks like the tops of crochet stitches. So there's row 1, row 2. It's an easy way to count. So I'm going to work my third row, so you can easily see in this first stitch that we'll be working the front and back bar really easy, because so here's the front right here, and then here is the back, because I kind of made that one a little loosey-goosey. So it might not look the prettiest, but then you can actually really see it pretty well. And I'm just going to pull up that loop and just work this row. And it just gives like a neat texture with this stitch, working in this reverse Tunisian crochet stitch. So if you want to kind of do something a little different than the Tunisian simple or the Tunisian, you know, purl or knit stitch, you know, give this one a try. And then we just work the knit stitch and then work these stitches off like you normally would. Now I made a hat with using this stitch, and I used the Tunisian reverse Tunisian stitch as part of the hat band. And I think it looked pretty cool. And I do believe I'm going to use the other side. I'm not sure. The pattern is 2 years old just about, so I'll have to revisit it and see how I actually, if I use this side or the other side for the hat band. I'm not sure, but hat turned out pretty cute, I think. And the entire hat, I believe, is made in Tunisian crochet, and If you wanted to make the hat, you do not need to use a Tunisian hook for it. You can use a regular old crochet hook. Even if you have one with a thicker handle, you could probably still make it. It might be a little bunchy up here, but I think it might work. I'm not 100% sure. So if it doesn't, if you try it, please forgive me. All right, let's do another row here. Working this Tunisian, reverse Tunisian stitch here. So you can work as many rows as you would like in your swatch. And then I'm going to work these guys off. So once you get the hang of it, it does work up pretty quickly. If you're familiar with the basic Tunisian crochet stitches, you know, you should be able to stitch a couple rows in no time at all. So if I was working these stitches off, so let's say, you know, I've made 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm like, that's good enough. Then you would want to work these stitches off. So I would actually work these stitches off, you know, the same way, in reverse Tunisian stitch. So I would put my hook, you know, just like I was working the reverse Tunisian stitch, pull up my loop, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops, and just work the stitches off. And again, when you're working Tunisian stitches off, you want to make sure your stitches, you keep a nice even tension, that you don't work them off too tightly or too loosely. So sometimes, you know, it can be a little tricky finding that happy medium. I just find it's easier if you just kind of stay relaxed and just try to keep an even tension. And after, you know, if you've done quite a bit of Tunisian projects, you know, practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the better you get. Alright, so there's my swatch there of reverse Tunisian crochet. So I hope you enjoyed this Stitch of the Week, and I thank you so much for watching.